Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a truly gripping courtroom showdown. But look, we aren't just looking at legal maneuvering here. We're going to witness the total, ground-up emotional transformation of a genuinely ruthless billionaire. We're going to look at the exact moment a man's entire worldview just completely shatters and how the past can violently collide with the present. I'm absolutely thrilled to guide you through this story because the shift in power dynamics we're about to see is just fascinating to analyze.
So I want to pose this psychological hook directly to you before we get started. Really think about it. What does it take to break a billionaire? When a person is shielded by immense wealth, armies of lawyers, and decades of absolute corporate dominance, how much does a $3 billion legacy truly cost? Keep that question in the back of your mind as we watch a seemingly untouchable man get stripped down to his absolute core.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. The status quo and a collision of two worlds.
What's really interesting right off the bat is the stark, almost uncomfortable contrast between our two figures. On one side, you have the plaintiff, Richard Hawthorne. He's a real estate tycoon worth over $3 billion. He's aggressive, he's powerful, and as the trial begins, he is literally smirking at the plaintiff's table. Now, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have the defendant, Margaret Wilson. She's a 78-year-old widow and retired school teacher. She walks in wearing simple clothes, heavily relying on a walking cane, and honestly, people barely even look at her. It's a massive physical and emotional mismatch. You've got the cold, towering tycoon versus the quiet, elderly widow.
So why are they even in court? Well, Richard Hawthorne is suing Margaret for trespassing. The disputed land sits right smack in the middle of Hawthorne's newest luxury development project, and it's valued at $20 million. If she loses the home she's lived in for 52 years. But let's put this into perspective for a second. To a guy worth $3 billion, $20 million is literally couch change. It's pennies. This lawsuit isn't about financial necessity for Richard. It proves his initial motivation was pure, unadulterated, arrogant ego. The prosecutor smiles, calling it a simple property dispute. But trust me, it's about to be anything but simple.
Which brings us to part 2, the unexpected catalyst. The metal box.
The moment the power dynamic completely shifts is when the judge asks if the defense has a response, and Margaret quietly reaches into her handbag. She pulls out this old, beat-up metal box containing a yellowed envelope, and inside are original property deeds. And this brilliantly illustrates the backstory that Hawthorne's expensive lawyers completely missed. Let's walk through this timeline together. Imagine it's 1968. Margaret's husband owned a farm. A man came to them absolutely broke, with nothing, begging for help. Margaret's husband loaned this man a massive amount of money to save his dying business. In return, the man signed over this exact piece of land as collateral, promising to buy it back one day. But he never did.
Of course, Hawthorne's lawyer immediately stands up and shouts forgery. But Margaret, she just shakes her head and tells them to look closer at the signature. The signature on those 1968 deeds belonged to William Hawthorne, Richard Hawthorne's father. You can almost see Richard's corporate armor completely piercing here. His smirk vanishes instantly. He stands up and stammers, "That's impossible." But as the experts take the documents away to authenticate them, a suppressed memory triggers in Richard's mind. He remembers a story his dad used to tell, a story about a farmer who saved his life. Well, when the experts return an hour later, they confirm every single deed is 100% authentic. The courtroom just explodes.
And that drops us right into part 3, the breaking point, the letter.
The pacing of the room slows down significantly here, as Margaret reveals she actually isn't there for the land at all. Actually, scratch that, she is there to deliver a sealed letter from Richard's father. Richard opens the envelope and sees his dad's handwriting. He reads it silently. I want you to picture Richard's physical reaction in this moment. This untouchable billionaire's hands start shaking. Tears begin to well up in his eyes. The judge quietly asks him a question, but Richard literally cannot speak. His entire worldview is actively shattering in front of a room full of people. He hands the letter to the judge. It reads, "If you're reading this, then I've failed to teach you the most important lesson of all."
His father writes, "Wealth isn't measured by what you own. It's measured by what you owe others." I want to pause here and ask you to reflect on that for a second. How do you measure your own true wealth? We spend so much time building our empires, right? Big or small. But this letter forces Richard, and all of us really, to evaluate what a legacy actually means.
The letter finishes with this devastating blow to Richard's ego. This woman and her husband saved our family. Without them, there would be no Hawthorne empire. Treat her with the respect she deserves. The courtroom goes pin drop quiet. Richard wipes away his tears.
Stripped of all his arrogance, of all his billions, the tycoon suddenly looks physically small for the very first time in years. The emotional transformation from the guy smirking at the plaintiff's table a few hours ago to the man standing here right now is total and complete.
Part 4. The Ultimate Redemption. A New Legacy. You know how a person handles a completely shattered ego tells you everything you need to know about who they truly are. Let's shift our focus to the resolution and narrate Richard's rebirth. Watch the speed and totality of this 180-degree emotional turnaround right there in the courthouse. Step 1. Richard slowly walks across the room and literally kneels beside Margaret, apologizing for almost destroying his father's legacy. Step 2. He immediately withdraws the lawsuit. Boom, it's over. But he isn't finished. Step 3. He steps outside to the waiting microphones and announces that the Hawthorne Foundation will donate $50 million to support retired teachers all across America. The crowd, predictably, goes wild. And then he turns to Margaret to deliver this absolute game changer of a twist. He looks at her and says, "And my first teacher was you." 50 years earlier, Richard Hawthorne had sat in Margaret's third-grade classroom. She was the one who had actually taught him how to read. He hadn't recognized her when he dragged her into court, but Margaret, she had recognized him the instant she saw him.
Which brings us to the beautiful conclusion of our explainer today. Months later, a brand new school opens in Chicago called Wilson Academy, named after Margaret and her late husband. And right there at the entrance stands a bronze plaque. Never forget the people who helped you before the world knew your name. It's just an incredible story of emotional transformation, and I want to leave you with a lingering thought today. Who helped you before the world knew your name, and how are you honoring your own debt to them? Thank you so much for joining me as we unpack this incredible source material. Catch you next time.